Hello learners, I am Sukhvinder, Associate Professor in Educational Survey Division, NCERT, New Delhi. Today's session is related with education as an instrument for social change, which is part of your BES 122, Contemporary India and the Education. For this particular session, we have kept certain learning outcomes. Let's see how these learning outcomes are being framed. We have understand the meaning of social change, describe the characteristics of education as an instrument of social change, analyze the role of education in social change, and familiarize the learners about the role of National Education Policy 2020 in bringing social change. So all these learning outcomes are very important, and let's see how these learning outcomes are attained with today's session. So for this particular session on education as an instrument for social change, there are certain keywords like education, instrument, change, and social change. We will try to establish the relationship between these key terms: education, instrument, change, and social change. So when it comes to education, so there are several points which comes to your mind. Since you are dealing with education, you are student undertaking degree in education, so you are well acquainted with the word education. But still, if for a moment I'll ask you that what is education, so you will be grappling with several ideas. So many ideas will come to your mind. Some of you may be thinking that it's a process of imparting or acquiring knowledge, or you can say that it is there to develop the powers of reasoning and judgment. Some of you will argue that this is a process where act of imparting or acquiring skills takes place as to attain profession. Or there will be a group of students, those who will say that education is nothing but the results produced from training, from study, or from a particular instruction. There will be another group of students, those who will say that, it is related to a degree, or we can say that to the level of kind of schooling. And there will be another set of students, those who will be making an argument that this is nothing but a science or art of teaching pedagogy. Apart from that, some of the students may also be providing statements quoted by different thinkers or different educationists like Swami Vivekananda, Gandhiji, Aurobindo, Tagore, or maybe from the Western philosophers. So what I want to convey here is that education means differently to the different persons. But let's operationalize the concept of education for this particular session, and what we can see that this is a process for acquiring knowledge. This is a process for teaching students. This is a process to acquire not only knowledge but to acquire skills and competencies in different kind of setup, whether it's a formal, informal, or non-formal. So with this concept of education, let's move further and let's try to understand the concept of change. I'm sure that when you are teaching in your class, maybe in your own subject, whether it's languages, mathematics, science, social sciences, geography, astronomy, economy, so you are well acquainted with the word change. And there are several instances where you must have used this word change while describing the processes or narrating about the phenomena. But I'm sure that you must have used this word change very often. So let's try to take some of the examples. Like you must have used that change the tense or voice if you are dealing with English language, or you are teaching any other language to your students. Or you must have used the word change of mathematical science in your mathematics class. And if you are teaching science, then you must have surely talked about physical and chemical changes, and in geography you must have talked about change in weather, change in course of a river, changing phases of moon, changes which takes place on the surface of the earth, whether these are slow changes or fast changes. And then in psychology we talk about change in human nature. In biology you must have talked about changing color of the foliage, and in geography again you must have talked about the change in population, how this changes takes place and what are the implications of these changes. And when it comes to economy, you must have certainly talked about change in per capita income in a given country. So what I want to conclude here is, you are very familiar with the word change, and to have its synonymous, synonyms. So what we can say that it's very closely connected with certain words like alteration, transformation, substitution, variation or modification. But in this presentation our major concern is regarding social change. And now we need to establish the link between society and social. So we all are aware that society is a group of people coming together, working in cohesion. They have certain commonalities, they have certain common traditions, cultures, values, and they are working for a common goal for the perpetuation of the society. Right. And now the certain aspects are related with society, and we consider those aspects as social aspects. And today's learning will be moving around the kind of social change and how education as a subsistence of society helps in bringing this social change. And now if you look at the topic, there's another important word specified in the topic: instrument of change. What does the word instrument means here? So here the word instrument means something, it's a mechanism to achieve something, or what we can say that to perform something, right? Or very precisely what we can say that these are means to achieve something. So what we can say that how education will be used as means to achieve that social change. So with this perspective, let's build our today's discussion, and let's move further and try to integrate these three words, society, change, social change and instrument. So let me sum up what we have discussed in a few seconds before. Like when it comes to society, it's nothing but a group of people living together, sharing common goals and responsibilities, and there are various aspects, customs, values, cultures and ideals of the society through which society grows further, society is perpetuated, people live in that society. So, and what we can further build the how we can further build the discussion is that when it comes to social, we have got three different aspects, three different elements. Like one can be social structure, then we can have social processes, and the third one is social order. So let's try to learn something about these three terms and just try to establish the relationship to understand our today's topic. When it comes to social structure, it's the distinctive, stable arrangement of institutions like family, marriage, religion, whereby human beings in a society interact and live together. So, in this, we talk basically about the structure, about the composition of the society, how society is composed, and then So we'll go to the next related concept of social processes, which talks about working for the solidarity and benefit of the society. And for this we know that there are certain elements like one needs to be competitive, there's a feeling of conflict, there's a value of cooperation, there's a value of accommodation and assimilation, and all these processes like competitiveness, conflictive nature, cooperation, accommodation and assimilation helps in moving these social processes further. And the third related concept is social order, and social order promotes certain standards of beliefs and behaviors in order to keep the things stable. So what about the social change? Social change is a wide range of changes in thoughts, attitudes, beliefs and nature of individuals living in the society. So when I am saying say the change in the attitude, belief and nature of individuals in the society, people in the society, which means that peoples together in an aggregated form say are considered as society. So social change in a structural or functioning of the societal forms will be a matter of discussion for this particular session. Now you will have $1 million question that why social change has to be there. So what are the factors responsible for this social change? Whether social change brings some positivity in the system or negativity in the system, whether social change helps in growth of the society, whether social change is a regressive step. So all those ideas must be coming in your mind. So now when we talk about the why of social change, what are the factors responsible for this social change? So we will be broadly classifying these factors under 4 categories. That includes your innovation, and innovation is nothing but your advancement in the areas of science and technology. And you must have seen that how science and technology brought revolution in the areas of transportation, in the areas of communication, in establishing industries, in the areas of medicine, surgery and so on. So we have seen that with the advancement in technology, with the advancement in science and technology, how these sectors of the societies has evolved over a period of time and what impact they have created on the society as a whole. So when it comes to impact, was this a positive change or was this a negative change? Then let's move on to the second important factor. Like I'll convey that there are certain social institutions each, and what we can notice that change in a single social institution leads to changes in all the institutions. For example, so if there is a change in the family system, certainly it will bring changes in the industrial system also. So if there is a nuclear family, if the family members are educated, they will be more involved in secondary and tertiary sector of the economy rather than undertaking their say pursuit in the primary sector. If the size of the family is very large, probably they will be depending largely upon the primary sector, which includes your agriculture, lumbering, mining and so on. So again, when industrial society is there, then the level of family, the standard of living of the family will be altogether determined by the kind of industry which is prevalent in the area or in a given geographical region. So what we can say that say one institution keeps provide influence on the other institution, and this leads to the development or evolution of social change. Then there's another element related to demography, and more precisely what we can say that in a common parlance we can say population. There are three important elements of population. We say birth rate, death rate and migration. So change in one element may impact the overall population of a given region. If there's a more of birth rate, less of death rate, situation will be different. If there's a more of death rate, less of birth rate, again situation will be different. And if there is a more incoming population in a particular region and less outgoing population from that region, or vice versa, situation will change, and this will lead to a kind of a particular, a very specific social change in the society. So the third factor which is responsible for the kind of social change which we witness in the society is the way elements of population operates in the system. And another important aspect which we may like to discuss as a factor of social change is environment. And we all are aware that these days so many talks are being held where we had discussions on climate change, and we also talks about natural calamities, natural disasters, may it be floods, may it be droughts, may it be cyclones, tsunami, or they can be man-made disasters like forest fire can be there, or we can have biological disasters the way we had pandemic phase in the recent past. So all these environment related factors also contribute to the change in the society. So broadly what we can say that there are four major aspects which leads to the social change in the society. One is related with the innovations, or in other words we can say in the innovations, or you can say science and technology. Then there are certain social institutions, they also bring change in the social system, like if there is an advancement in transport and communication, so this will also bring certain changes in the society. So we all are aware that how our life is totally dependent on cell phones or computers or laptops, and how our day-to-day life, our work style, our day-to-day living style is greatly impacted by these gadgets which we are using in our day-to-day life. Then population and of course the environment are also important aspects which leads to social change. And now to sum up what we can say that social change is very essential for things to keep on moving. So social change is nothing but it's a collective behavior. So with this discussion, let's move on to this understand some of the characteristics of the social change. So after listening to the factors of social change, let's try to understand some of the characteristics of social change. The very first factor or characteristic what you can see on your screen is inevitable. So inevitable means this change can't be avoidable, and we have heard several quotations that the thing which is permanent in life is change, right? And we also hear the quotations like nothing is constant. Change is very much important. Change is very much required. Change is the law of nature. And that is how what we can say that this is inevitable. And similarly, social change has to be there. It will be bound to be there. So we may have different pace of social change. Like they can be a slow change or fast change. Some of the societies may be taking a lot of time from having that transitional shift from agrarian to industrial society, from primitive to modern society, from rural to urban society. But that change is bound to be there, and as I've rightly said that pace may differ, but the thing which is constant is that it is inevitable. So another thing which is seen as a characteristic of social change is it's planned as well as it's unplanned. So we all are aware that we had national education policy with us, which came in the year 2020, and with that we want to bring certain desirable changes in the society by educating the children of the country, by educating the youth of the country, by imparting them skills, by imparting them knowledge, by building their competencies to generate a proper human resource development which can contribute to the society. The whole thing is in a very planned manner. But at the same time, even if you will not be taking all this thing in a planned manner, still these changes will take place, as I have already told you that these are inevitable, this is unavoidable. Some sort of changes will certainly be taking place. Another important characteristic of social change is that it is uneven. So whenever a political phenomena takes place or social phenomena takes place, not necessary that all the regions of a given area will have even growth. So we can have developed regions within underdeveloped pockets of the area, or we can have underdeveloped areas in the developed areas. So similarly, when it comes to people, so if a particular phenomena operates in the system, it may yield positive results for few people, and it may not yield proper result for another set of people. Like we are very well conversant with the phenomenon, the way multi-purpose dams are constructed in the country. So there are several multi-purpose dams which were being constructed in the country, and we know that for having development of that particular region, these multi-purpose dams are very much required. So though we will be generating lot of hydroelectricity, though it may give employment to several people, but at the same time there must be a group of people, those who are not satisfied with this kind of social change, because they were uprooted from their native lands, they lost their jobs, they lost their native places, they lost their homelands, and so they have to move to different places, they have to stay there as migrant laborer in the new areas. They may have certain problems faced in the new setup. So the message which I want to convey here is that the social change is uneven for the set of people staying in a given area. It's not even. So then let's come to the next characteristic of social change. It can be either internal or external. So when it comes to external, we are aware about the history of our country, and we know that we had several invaders coming from different parts of the world in different periods of the history, right? When these invaders came, or different rulers, they have ruled our country. So they also brought their ideology, their norms, their values, their their traditions along with us. And then this fusion has taken place, and the natives also tried to copy those traditions, or by force you can say, or by compulsion you can say. But that external influence was there in the society, and this led to a kind of a social change in a given society. Then apart from that, there are certain non-social determinants also. Non-social determinants may include like your climate, availability of resources and biological resources, which also leads to change in values, change in traditions, change in our practices, change in our occupations. And we all have seen that with the change in climatic conditions in a given region, how we are acclimatizing, how we are adapting, how we are acclimatizing with the new normal situations which are emerging from different climatic conditions. So this also is a main characteristic of social change. Then say, as a student of history, you must have learned that, whenever this social change is there, so it can be there, say, from a very peaceful process, from a very peaceful phenomena. Like we all are aware that in the 18th century there were several social religious reformers in the country, like Swami Vivekananda, Rama Mohan Roy, and there were many other, say, social and religious reformers. So they tried to bring certain changes in the societies by say, motivating the people and reflecting on the present, say, evils of the society or certain traditional practices which were not considered rational. So this was a very peaceful kind of a mechanism for incorporating social change. On the other hand, say, it can be a violent emerging from a particular riot, from a particular revolution. So what we want to bring here is that this is also one of the major characteristic of social change, that it can be brought through peaceful measure or from a violent measure. Then say, there is no single factor which is operating for a social change, and as I have rightly said that there are multiple factors. Education is one such factor which is bringing social change. Then education leads to changes in other sector of the society, like I have already conveyed you that education sector influences your transport sector, industrial sector, political system of the country, and workforce of the country, and that is how all these changes in different sectors of society or different subsystem of the society also bring certain changes. And then there are certain other factors or other characteristics are there, like this thing, social change is continuous, as I have already conveyed that it's inevitable, and it doesn't stop anywhere, though the pace may differ. It may be a slow, or at times it may be a very fast. It's very universal. It's not that only one part will be affected, others will not be affected. And as in the beginning I have rightly said, the thing which is constant is change. And then say, it may be a very momentary kind of a change, or we can say it's a temporal change, or it can be a long-term change also, but change is bound to be there. So these are some of the characteristics of social change. And now let us see that how the kind of role of education plays in changing the social setup. So on your screen you can see say, sun-like feature, sun-like image which is glowing. That means say, human resources are being generated, and by learning, by undertaking education, by developing competencies, by developing skills, by acquiring knowledge. So the concept which we have discussed under education, and as a result it acts as an agent of empowering the thoughts and lives of an individual. So it's not only empowering the thoughts and lives of an individual, but it empowers the thoughts and lives of the entire society, because society is nothing but aggregate of various individuals. So one of the main impetus of education is to change the attitude, thinking and lifestyle of person. And the example which I may like to give here is development of science and technology, and how say, the science and technology has brought changes in the entire society, how our lifestyles have changed, how our workplaces have changed, how our thoughts, actions and behavior has changed. And finally what we can say that the social change helps us to turn weaknesses into strength. Say, it helps us to turn our failure into success. It also helps us in identifying problems present around us in our society, and also helps in searching for their solution. So with the help of education, and we try to overcome our weaknesses. We try to identify solutions to the problems which we encounter in our day-to-day life. So education also helps us in preservation of social heritage, transmission of culture and dissemination of new knowledge. Not only that, we have already discussed that education helps us in social mobility. We have already are aware of what this concept of social mobility means, whether it's vertical mobility or social horizontal mobility. So the status of people in a given society is changed the moment they acquire education in a right manner. They become enlightened, they acquire skills, and this helps us in moving from one part of the ladder to the another part of the ladder. Not only that, the education also helps us in development of scientific and objective outlook. And apart from that, we must have heard several times that education helps us in generating demographic dividend. Suppose, say, as we are aware that population is divided into three major age groups. We have got 0 to 14 children, and then 15 to 59 as adults, and then 60 plus we consider under old population. When it comes to 15 to 59, and which contains larger chunk in a given region, when they have proper competencies, proper skills, proper knowledge, and they are used in as a workforce, they are used to generate the economy of the country, they are used to build the economy of the country, probably then they are considered under demographic dividend, and this is an asset for the country. So what we have seen that education leads to certain changes in the society, how individuals are affected, how people are affected, how society as a whole is affected, and how it contributes to social change. And moreover, what we have learned that this education accelerates economic development, which in turn helps for social change. So what we have learned in this particular discussion, that education plays a very important role, very significant role, very major role in bringing social change in the society. So moving towards the conclusion, as I have stated that in the year 2020, the nation got national education policy, and there are certain expected outcomes from the policy. Like if you recall some of the expected outcomes of the policy, they are universalization of access from early child care education to secondary education. That means no child will be deprived of education in the country. So every child in the country may be staying in the say mainland, or in a remote location, or in a isolated location, or due to some deprivation, if a child is not able to attain education, that fellow will also be brought into the main field and mainstream, and they will be provided access to education. Not only that, NEP tries to frame that objective outcome to ensure equity and inclusion. So everybody will have equal opportunities for attaining several educational related rights. Apart from that, there are some more expected outcomes, bringing back 2 crores children which are right now out of school, then to attain sustainable development goals of retaining all children in schools until completion of secondary education, improving quality and achievement of learning outcomes, focusing on 21st century skills in teaching, learning and assessment, resource sharing by means of developing school complexes, and overcoming the language barrier in learning. So why I am discussing all these points here, that National Education Policy 2020 has certain expected outcomes, and this will help us in gauging the situation that how we are investing on the human resource of our country. Why we are investing on human resource of the country? Because ultimately these will be contributing to the other sectors of the society, and they will be bringing desirable social change in the country, which will lead the country in a very prosperous manner, in a very growing manner, or in a very in order to achieve the desired development in the given domain. So with this, we will be concluding that education plays a major role in bringing social change in the country, and as far as opportunity is concerned to reflect on this particular topic, you can see on your screen that there's a question reflected on the screen, like, according to you, how education is an instrument for social change? Please provide your narratives from your own life experiences so that you can build a better understanding of this particular concept. And if you have got further queries related to this particular topic, you can get back to us, you can send your feedback, you can post all your queries through email, and email address will be shared with you. And with that, we conclude here. Happy learning to all the learners. Thank you very much.